So today I thought it would be a great day to go outside and look to see what's going on in the apiary. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this is The Way to Bee. We're looking at pussy willows. Look at that. Had to slow it down because it's windy right now. But look at the anthers. Look at the pollen on those. That's a great indicator for me here that my bees are going to be able to get pollen and bring them into the hive. So what a great opportunity now on this sunny day to walk around and see what's going on in different landing boards in the apiary. I planted these, of course, as a windbreak for my apiary. Why not have an edible windbreak? Plus, it shows me when the seasonal changes happen. Look here on this little Atlas weather station. That's a mason bee. And the reason I show that is because sometimes when you become a beekeeper, you like to change the environment a little bit for all pollinators, knowing that they're going to benefit your bees as well. So these little mason bees are now emerging just in time in concert with what's going on with the seasonal changes here in the state of Pennsylvania. So we're looking at the first landing board here that's facing east. Lots of activity. Guard bees on the landing board, that's great news. And the pollen is coming in at a rate too fast to even count. Take a look at hive number 12 over here. Same thing. Lots of pollen coming in. That means they're brooding up, and we're going to see some brood. Here's a messy one. It looks like we've got some grass in there. This had an entrance that was taller than 3/8 of an inch. Probably had a mouse get in there, but it's gone now. Now we look at this other hive. It's a flow hive. Has a reduced entrance there. Lots of pollen. I'm just running around looking at all the different landing boards. This one has a lot of waste material on it, but they look healthy in every other way. And we've got lots of pollen coming in there. Here's another one. Same thing. They're fanning. That's a good sign because you know what that tells me? There's humidity in there. And they're also bringing in nectar. So not just pollen, they're bringing in what they need. Let's slow it down. Now we see them coming in and they're backlit. What's that going to do for us? Well, first of all, you see the pollen on their corbicula, their hind legs there. And pollen's coming in different colors. Some of it's tan, some of it's light brown, some of it's almost white. And sometimes when you're looking for pollen, if you're looking for that bright yellow, orangey color, you may be missing the fact that they're bringing in a variety of different pollens. Now because it's backlit, we can see that they're also bringing in nectar. Look at their abdomens and how fully extended they are. Look how heavy they are when they come in for a landing. You'll see the abdomens hanging low, and then the light comes through right behind the thorax. And you're going to see that that's because their honey crop is full. Look at that one right there. Look at the pollen on that one. Lots of pollen pants here. This is great because actually it's going to get a little colder next week, especially at nighttime, so they're provisioning just fine. If you've been putting out dry pollen sub, as I did, to test it, look at the pollen on the bee closest to us. It's dark green now. So anyway, they're not after a dry pollen sub because real pollen's in the environment. Good news for the bees. So this is a great chance to get out and see what they're doing. Now we're looking at the nucleus hives, which are resource hives. They went into winter. We talk about them a lot because this is in a stack of 3 boxes, 5 deep frames in each box. They're not fed, they're not cared for in any way other than to put insulation on the top. All of the hives do not have upper vents. They do not have upper entrances. Now the long Langstroth hives. This is cool to look at. Very busy, lots of activity. Excellent activity at the landing board. You want to be looking at the ground in front of your hives too, but when you see activity like this, sometimes it could be robbing. What would be the difference between bees that are working their colony and bees or a hive that's being robbed out by others? Well, robbers don't have pollen on their legs for starters. So we're going to slow that down so we can see this activity. Pollen on their hind legs, they're residents. They're bringing the groceries home. Some of them are bumping off the landing board. They're heavy. Those that don't have pollen probably have nectar. They might be bringing some water in because the humidity right now is actually very low. Another reason not to have top vents or upper entrances this time of year, because even when it warms up, if you have low humidity, that's why they have fire warnings right now. They also have problems keeping the humidity up when they're feeding the new larvae inside the hive. And if you keep watching, I'm going to show you inside a hive, one of the observation hives actually. But we're going to go around and look at some of the other hives. I know people have questions about the Layens hives to see how they did this winter. But the long Langstroth here is just standard Langstroth deep frames. And they also were not fed through winter, but we did leave lots of honey on. And what I changed this year was I insulated the top heavily with double bubble. And we sealed the joints. So great success there. Now, the Layens hive. This Layens hive was so productive I had problems with it last year. When I say I had problems, I mean because I needed another Layens hive to move frames into because they don't match Langstroth frames. So if you start with Layens or you're thinking about getting one, I would suggest getting a couple of them, because if you have to split them, and if you have to expand, you're going to need another Layens to do that. And here's the other one, hive number 29. In fact, I got it so late in the year I didn't even have time to paint scenes on it. I didn't think they were going to make it, to be honest. They were just an afterthought. I think I put 5 frames in here. And again, they didn't get any additional provisioning. It's insulated, and they're doing well. Now, the way to be academy building. There are 3 observation hives in here, so when we walk by and look at the landing boards, that one's nice and strong, has been all year. The middle one here, I thought was not going to make it about midwinter. They fooled me, because they're out there getting pollen too. The key right now is to see how much pollen's coming in. And so when we have the bees coming in through their entrances and they're loaded with pollen, that means your queen made it. Now, if it's just a smattering of pollen, there is a chance that you've got laying workers, and they might be doing drones right now. But these colonies all have queens. I'm going to show you one in a few minutes here. So this is the interior of the building, and this is the way I wintered my observation hives. They all came through in top form, and they just have double bubble Reflectex, whatever you want to call it. Over the top, I call them hot pockets. These are the temperatures inside the hot pockets, except for the lower right, which is 73 degrees. That's the temperature inside the building. So this is number 27 right in the middle. I had concerns about these last 2, because what did they do to me at the end of the season last year? They swarmed. They had to produce queens at the end of the year. Look at all the empty space in there. You can tell they weren't fed. And they do still have some capped honey to the left, but what's important is they've got brood. And while I'm looking at it, this is the interior temperature, 72 degrees. Look who's right on the outside frame. This is the eastern frame of this colony. And there's the queen. How do we know which bee is receiving and which bee is feeding? Well, the one that sticks the tongue out, this is called trophallaxis. The one that sticks the tongue out is receiving resources. In this case, the queen is receiving resources from the nurse bee. Now that keeps the queen clean. And here's the thing, the nurse bees have never been out of the hive. So that's kind of a layer of protection also. They're depending on the other members of the colony that are foraging out and bringing in right now, as we just saw, nectar and pollen. Pollen is the protein, so that the queen can produce eggs, and then once those eggs hatch in 3 days, the nurse bees will start feeding them. So these nurse bees are just taking care of the brood and the queen. This is the queen's retinue, and you'll see that they surround her. They constantly touch her with their antennae. She is constantly sensing them with her antennae, and you'll also see that when she wants to be fed, she'll reach out with one of her forelimbs and kind of encourage them to feed her. So one after another, they keep feeding the queen. Now the queen could, in theory, lay her weight in eggs every single day. But, of course, she needs open cells to do it. She's standing on capped brood right now. That's a great sign, because here it is, April the 13th. And this lets me know kind of what's going on probably in other hives in the apiary, because if the observation hives are brooding up, you can bet they are too, and we've already seen the landing boards, so we know that things are coming in hot and heavy here. Now, some people say, a queen can lay 1,500 eggs a day. Well, she's going to lay eggs day and night, and they have to have the cells available. They have to have resources to encourage her to do that, and one thing that's absent right now, male bees. I don't see drones in any of my colonies. And we were recently talking about others that are keeping bees in this neck of the woods, and some of them are creating queen cells. And that's a problem in the absence of drones. Why? Because the absence of drones indicates that if you make a new queen right now, And that virgin queen flies out. She needs to be mated with drones, and if there aren't any drones out there for her to mate with, she does not mate with drones coming from her own colony, then her chances of getting mated in time and coming back are slight. So we really would love it if they did not make swarm cells this time of year. This colony has plenty of space in it. Look at the worker just to the right there. Sometimes they're parked and taking a break. People have a saying, busy as a bee, but I'll tell you what, you see a lot of bees parked sitting around doing nothing in particular. But this queen, look at her abdomen, how long it is. Well past the length of her wings. Her wings will generally run about half the length of her abdomen. Another way to spot the queen is to look at that really big, shiny thorax right behind her head there. It is very distinctive. It does have some hair on it, but usually they look bald. So when you squint your eyes and look kind of out of focus at the surface of your frames, there's a pretty good chance you're going to spot your queen if she's on that frame. So this is a bonus round for me that we can look at the brood. We also see that there is pollen being stored to the right, and look at the differences in color. And there are eggs in the bottom of some of these cells, and some of the larvae have already hatched. And as I mentioned before, they hatch on the third day. She stuck her head in there. She sensed that cell with her antenna and verified that there's no egg in there, and now she's putting one in. And as soon as she's done laying this egg, she'll move out of the way, and then we'll get the camera over that so you can see it. Because eggs are tough to spot. This is black plastic foundation in here, which makes that task easier. So if you're thinking about what kind of foundation to put in your brood areas, black's a good choice if you want to spot eggs and freshly hatched larvae. So here she's moving out of the way. We'll see if we can, there it is. There's the egg. And a freshly produced and placed egg is standing on its end. And that's what that one's doing. Now the bees ignore it. The nurse bees don't do anything with those eggs other than to keep them warm until they hatch on the third day. And once they do that, that freshly hatched larva is going to release a pheromone, and the nurse bees will know then to zip right in there and start feeding it multiple times a day. And this is worker brood. You can also see this light colored capping here. That is capped brood, which means they're past their 9th day. So when you see your queen put an egg in a cell, take a note, because 9 days later you'll be able to come out here and see them capping that brood. You can also see some of what I call the Michelin men there sitting. They're nice and shiny, they're white, and they've got good food and resources, but the food is not heavy. I think the environment hasn't gone full swing yet. You know, they're not swimming in resources, but this queen is doing a great job moving around and finding an empty cell to put an egg in. Now, this queen, how old is she? Well, we know they swarmed at the end of the year, and then that means they generated a queen in September. The good news was, in September there were plenty of drones flying around, and I was very happy when the queen in both of these colonies, the last 2 observation hive colonies, returned, and I knew that they were producing, so they did produce brood. And of course, they developed those fat-bodied winter bees that are so critical going into winter. And we really need lots of nutrition. Look at the bottoms of all these cells. You'll see eggs in all of them. Now, if there are multiple eggs in the bottom, which can happen at the beginning of the productive year for your queen, the nurse bees are going to police them up. How they decide which egg to remove and which to leave behind, I don't know. But she's parking another egg here. Another question you might have when you look at this, if they were just now drawing out the comb, would a queen put an egg in a shallow cell? And the answer is yes. Sometimes the queen will lay eggs in very shallow cells that can't accommodate a pupa, for example. But what the workers do is they finish drawing out the wax cells even while the larvae's growing and being fed. So don't worry about it. If you see it, it's not the end of the world. In fact, it's a good thing because it's going to encourage them to get over there and start drawing out the rest of the comb. Now this hive has plenty of space. These observation hives are different sizes, but this particular one is in triples, so 3 deep frames in a group and 3 high. So there's 9 deep frames in this observation hive, and I think that that's been key in getting them through our winters here in the state of Pennsylvania. This building is not heated. So it's sheltered from the wind, but other than the bubble wrap, these observation hives had no protection from the cold. So putting your frames in triples gives you interior spaces, so that center group of frames can be managed really well by the bees. So as observation hives only have 2 frames, so if they're in pairs going up, I never had good luck wintering those, even with 2-inch thick polystyrene panels on the face of each of those hives, trying to get them through winter. Never did it. Once I shifted to triples, now they're doing great. And this is a great queen. She's unmarked. I like to leave the queens in the observation hives unmarked because this is an education building. And when teenagers and kids and even grandkids come in here and they want to look around to see what a queen looks like, I don't want any cheating. We don't need any numbers on the thorax of the queen. I want them to be able to spot the queen based on her behavior. Right now it's easy because look, she's in plain view. And we have a brood frame here that is a face frame. So this also indicates that if she's laying out here on this frame that we can see, that means there are at least 4 surfaces that we can't see that are probably well laid up with eggs. So things are looking good this year. I thought it would be great to come out and see what was going on, but then when I realized the queen was laying, I thought I should make this video and give you kind of an update and explain a little bit about what goes on. If you're thinking about making splits in your colonies, wait until your frames are brooded up well, and definitely wait until you see lots of drones on your landing boards coming and going, because that means that we have the reproductive resources out in the environment. It also means that the colonies are doing well enough to produce drones, because they do that in great numbers when there's a surplus of resources, when they've already built the workforce that they need. And it's a great time then to do your splits. And I highly recommend, if you see queen cells being built, I recommend at that point that you find your queen, take her out with a couple of frames and put her in a nucleus hive, because she's going to leave no matter what. Now if you don't mind them swarming and you just want to make a new queen and take a gamble that the queen flies out and comes back, you can do that. But I see taking the queen in a frame or 2 of brood and putting them in a nucleus hive, once you see queen cells being built, that's an insurance policy. Because once she's in that nucleus hive, if the main hive that is producing replacement queens, if they all fly out or something happens and they don't return mated, then you've got a resource, you've got the original queen, and you can restore her to that colony and not lose them. So, insurance policy, insurance queens. Nucleus hives are great to have. Get good ones, by the way. So that's what's going on inside the observation hive building. And let's take a quick look out to the west there. So this is my westernmost hive. That means it gets exposed to full wind, rain, weather. We've had heavy wind. Look at that landing board, by the way, the bottom board. Don't buy plywood style bottom boards unless you're really going to paint it up or something. These don't hold up well for me, so I highly recommend getting solid bottom boards. They last for many years whether you paint them or not. So the colony's great. They don't seem to mind. This is a double deep. If you look at the upper box there, that's one of those Hoover beeswax hives, and you can see that finish does not last forever. The bottom box is a standard Langstroth hive box. That one was from Mann Lake, and it has a spar varnish finish that is lasting just as long as the Hoover finish. So there's that. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that things are going your way wherever you live, and that your bees are bringing in lots of pollen. Great opportunity to see what's going on from the landing boards. Thanks for watching. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this is The Way to Bee.